Welcome to the Alive Loren Podcast and the place of celebrating juicy, soulful, whole, living, adventuring on this journey of a lifetime. So on this theme of the joy, connecting to the joy, a joy liberated from outcome and results. So I kind of know James Corden more through my sons and watching snippets of some late night show that he was host of and some karaoke car thing. And yeah, it just always came across as some fun, really nice, humorous host. And I'd never really seen him in an interview situation. And it was just so lovely. So the thing that really struck me was he was talking about separating the joy of something from its so-called success or how well the public responds to something. So he was saying he was in Cats, the movie, which didn't really do so well. Maybe labeled more by all as more of a flop. But he was saying that he had so much fun making it. And there was times when they were all in full costume and he was sitting there and he mentioned I think Judi Dench and some other really well-known actor. And he can't remember what they were talking about, but just sitting there with these two icons of the acting profession. And he said he wouldn't change it for the world. And the importance of separating, that there's this joy that comes from bringing your fullness to doing something and to connect to that regardless, because sometimes there's a timing of something. So this wasn't specifically something that he said, but sometimes just was thinking that there's a time when what you have to offer creatively or whatever it is at a time when the public is open to receiving. And I also remember hearing this interview with the woman who was the director, Greta, she's with Barbie. And when she was asked about how she does these amazing blockbusters or, the number of successes that she'd had. And she's like, I'm just grateful that whatever I create at this time, that the audience is receptive and appreciative and wants to see it. Because you see other artists who in their lifetime created art that the audience was not ready for and they weren't appreciated or recognized in their particular lifespan or time frame of their offering. So when James mentioned this, and then he also said there was another program called Mammals, which was either once off or a series that he said career-wise, it's one of the things he's most proud of. And that even did get good reviews. But just publicly, for some reason at the time that it launched on the whole, everything of it, it just didn't catch the wave of public admiration or, following. And that was with a trail of good reviews. So it was just really lovely that. And it reminded me of that Hugh Prather quote. And just about that joy, and it kind of also reminded me with Mickey about getting to a place where there's no distinction anymore, where everything becomes a spiritual practice and there's a beauty to everything, which was also something that came through so strongly. It's an interview with James Corden and Jay Chetty. So Jay Chetty's the one interviewing, but also he was just talking about, so James was talking about how important, how expectation messes so much stuff up, and just get out of the way of how we think things should be and just work with what is, and actually the magic and privilege that it is to be alive, to be experiencing whatever is your moment, regardless of whether it's what you expected or what you'd prefer. Just tapping into connecting to the joy of the opportunity of life, and just reframing stuff. So it was so lovely, because one of the other takeaways from it that I really enjoyed was he was talking about a friend of his who had been in his first really serious relationship that broke up, and he was really heartbroken and devastated. And then James was saying to him, this is actually wonderful, because now you going through like heartbreak, you know how vulnerable like the heart is, and all the things that you can learn from this relationship, and that you can take with you, the learnings into your new relationship in the future, which even though at the time it may be something that you can't even contemplate, but there will come a time. And then all these things now that are the aching and the heartbreak and the heartache can bring beauty and depth and even more color and nuance and depth to a future relationship. And now his friend is in another relationship with something like a year or so down the line, and recognizes this that James was sharing then now. So I really loved that, and just playing on this whole theme of connecting to the joy of something. Then there's I don't know if it's Cynthia Evo. Oh yeah, she's played Harriet and she's played Aretha. It's also interesting. National Geographic have this series of seems to be kind of movies on iconic figures, which is really stunning to just see like a movement like National Geographic recognizing a movement of film, being in photography and then film, and actually like reinventing themselves somehow. So I just thought that was really lovely, reinventing with change. But along this theme of following the joy from the actual just doing, she told a story because now they're doing a film version of the play Wicked. And she's been cast in as Elfie, who's the so-called evil witch. And in her interview, she was talking about how years back when she was in drama school, there was a guy in her year who was a pianist, and they hooked up, and they used to go and take all these out of the library, these sheets of music, and one of them that they both really loved was a musical score from Wicked. And they would he would play and she would sing, and she knew they would sing it backwards, and little did she know that 10 years later, and also just the whole thing, because she had no idea they were making the movie, and she was actually booked for something else, which then got cancelled or reset schedules. All of a sudden she was available, and then got this call about, casting or auditioning or being considered for Wicked. And it was how the only reason that she did that score that 10 years ago and did it so much and so often was because she just loved it. She loved the music. So also you never know sometimes with just following the joy of something where it will become applicable or fit in later. And it also ties into my last sort of thread and share on this, which I loved with James's interview, was he was saying you just never know. You can't know what's good or bad. And sometimes someone can get a certain role and people will react to, oh my God, that is so amazing. So he's we don't know. We don't know how things are going to turn out. So you just got to have more just for faith and trust and surrender that the stuff that comes your way is part of your journey and your path, and just making peace with however it turns out, because we don't know. Sometimes you get something that you think is going to be the biggest amazing something, and it turns out to be like a dead horse, and then something else that you think nothing will come of leads to incredible things. And to just kind of let go and more go with the flow of it. And a kind of tail end to all of that was he referenced somebody else that did an inaugural speech. And in this, the guy was talking about how there was somebody, I don't know, sorry if you hear this alarm in the background, who, when they were casting for A Few Good Men, there was a small role that there was this young actor who'd been doing all these crazy jobs just to make money. And it had been 18 months, and this was his first role that he was cast in, even though it was a very small part. And then he also, at the same time, his agent called him to then he had a casting for a main lead role in something else. And then he got accepted for that. So then he landed up cancelling the small piece on A Few Good Men to take the lead role on this other piece. And then subsequently, someone else got cast in the small role of A Few Good Men. And for that person who got cast, it landed up being something that just led from one thing to another. And this person's had like a really remarkable career. And the other guy who then declined the small one because his agent had got him a lead role in another thing, that landed up getting cancelled. And yeah, it's just like how you just never know how things are going to turn out. We just never know. So it's not for us to necessarily know. But if more of the joy and satisfaction and bliss can come from the actual doing, and to find joy in, yes, the stuff that, like when Cynthia was singing the scores of Wicked because she really loved it and that was her joy, but also just to find the joy of doing work well, and satisfaction, from whatever it is, even the mundane and the trivial tasks. So here is too finding the joy in the doing and the being present to the actual living of life itself, and surrendering regardless of outcome or recognition or awards, and to just the joy of the juiciness of the participation in it all. Happy adventuring, precious heart. Mwah.